Emma's tiny fingers clutched a worn photograph of her mother as she stepped onto the plane, her oversized coat swallowing her small frame. At just 10 years old, Emma was traveling alone from Houston to New York, a journey filled with uncertainty but one she faced with quiet courage. Her shoes were scuffed, her backpack frayed, and her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much too soon. A kind flight attendant guided her to a middle seat, offering a warm smile that Emma shyly returned. To her left sat a man in an expensive suit, absorbed in his tablet and clearly bothered by her arrival. He barely looked up, let out a quiet sigh, and shifted away slightly. The contrast between them was stark, she, a child with nothing but a dream and a photograph, and he, Henry Langston, a billionaire tech mogul known more for his wealth than his warmth. Henry had no patience for distractions, especially not children. As far as he was concerned, this was a flight to get work done, not to engage in small talk with a kid. Emma didn't recognize him, nor did she care. Her thoughts were on her destination, New York City, where she hoped to live with her aunt after losing her mother months ago. She sat quietly, pressing the photo to her heart, whispering something only she could hear. Henry, feeling the tiniest nudge of discomfort from her presence, shifted again. He had no idea that this small, quiet girl beside him was about to change his life in a way no boardroom or business deal ever had. At 30,000 feet, fate had seated two strangers side by side. Only one of them knew they were searching for something. The other was about to find it. As the plane ascended through gray clouds, a sudden jolt of turbulence shook the cabin. Passengers gripped their armrests, and Henry's knuckles turned pale as he clutched the seat. But beside him, Emma remained strangely calm. She glanced at him, noticed his fear, and without hesitation reached out to gently hold his hand. "Are you okay, mister?" she asked softly, her voice more steady than it had any right to be. Henry blinked, startled, not just by her question, but by her composure. He gave a stiff chuckle, brushing it off, but didn't pull his hand away. Curiosity cracked his guarded demeanor. "You flying alone?" he asked after a long pause. Emma nodded, eyes focused on the clouds beyond the window. "I'm going to live with my aunt. My mom passed away last fall. Cancer." Her voice didn't tremble, only softened. Henry turned to look at her, this girl who had more grace than most adults he knew. Emma told him about her dad, who worked nights at a warehouse and drove a cab during the day to keep food on the table. How their heater barely worked last winter. How sometimes she went to school hungry but always smiled so her friends wouldn't worry. She shared how her mother used to tell her bedtime stories about kindness, about making the world better even when life felt unfair. "I want to build a hospital one day," she said. "A place where no kid ever gets turned away just because they don't have money." She looked up at Henry, not realizing he was the type of man who could make such dreams happen with a signature. He said nothing at first. For once, Henry Langston, the man who always had the answers, sat in silence, listening, really listening, for the first time in years. The hum of the engines had lulled the cabin into a peaceful stillness. Henry had just closed his eyes when a sudden sharp pain stabbed through his chest. His breathing grew shallow, sweat beaded on his forehead, and his face turned pale. He tried to call for help, but the words wouldn't come. His body slumped against the armrest. Emma looked over and froze for a second, unsure what was happening, then instinct kicked in. She grabbed his arm. "Mr. Henry," she called, her voice rising. Seeing the distress in his eyes, she remembered what her mom once said during her chemo treatments: "If someone's in pain, be calm. Be brave. They need your strength." Emma yelled, "Help. He's having a heart attack." The flight attendants rushed over, and a voice from a few rows back shouted, "I'm a nurse." Before anyone reached them, Emma was already digging into Henry's inner jacket pocket, where he had shown her his nitroglycerin tablets during a casual mention of his old heart condition. Her small hands weren't trembling. She placed the pill under his tongue, held his hand tight, and whispered, "Stay with me. Just breathe. You're going to be okay. I promise." Passengers watched in stunned silence as the little girl led a quiet battle against panic. The nurse took over quickly, checking his vitals, while the captain announced an emergency landing. Oxygen masks were brought out. Time crawled. As the plane descended toward the nearest airport, Henry's eyes fluttered open. Emma never let go of his hand. When they touched down and paramedics came aboard, he was stable, shaken, but alive. And everyone knew the truth: a 10-year-old girl had saved the life of one of the most powerful men in America, not with technology or money, but with courage, instinct, and heart. The days that followed felt like a dream to Emma. Her story had spread like wildfire: news outlets, social media, morning shows. The image of a small girl clutching the hand of a collapsing billionaire had captured the world's heart. Everyone wanted to know, who was this brave little girl with the shy smile and the soul of a giant? She and Henry were invited to a press conference in New York, and Emma stood beside him on the stage in a borrowed dress and shoes polished to a shine. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Henry stepped up to the mic first. He looked different now, less guarded, more human. "I've closed billion-dollar deals," he said, "but nothing in my life has meant more than the moment a little girl with nothing gave me everything. Emma didn't just save my life. She gave me purpose." Then he turned to her. "Emma," he said softly, "you can ask me for anything in the world. Anything at all. Just name it." The room held its breath. Emma blinked, her voice small but steady. "Build that hospital, mister. For kids like me. Not for me, for them." She glanced toward the cameras. "So no child has to lose a parent because they couldn't afford help. So no kid ever has to sleep in the cold or miss a meal because of bills." The silence cracked as a wave of emotion swept through the crowd. Reporters wept. Cameramen wiped their eyes. Even the stern executives in the front row looked away, their faces softening. In that moment, money didn't matter. Power didn't matter. All that mattered was one little girl with a dream bigger than herself, and the billionaire she moved to make it real. The first shovel of earth broke ground on a spring morning, beneath a sky as clear as Emma's wide, hopeful eyes. The sign read "Future Site of the Emma Grace Children's Hospital," and standing in front of it was the girl whose courage had turned a flight into a miracle. Henry stood beside her, now a friend and mentor, no longer just a billionaire but a man profoundly changed by a child's compassion. Construction crews cheered as Emma pressed a small hand into wet cement, leaving a print that would live there forever. Cameras flashed, but this time, she didn't flinch. She wasn't just the girl from the plane anymore, she was the face of something bigger. She'd become the youngest ambassador of the hospital that would bear her name, a place where every child, no matter their background, would be met with care, dignity, and hope. Emma visited the site often, reading stories to patients from nearby clinics, helping pick paint colors for the pediatric wards, and drawing smiling suns on the blueprint margins. She never asked for anything for herself. Not a new house. Not new clothes. Her joy came from the brick by brick rising behind her, proof that kindness could move mountains, and one voice, no matter how small, could echo louder than any fortune. And Henry? He no longer measured success in profits but in laughter echoing through hospital halls, in lives healed, in the girl who reminded him what it meant to truly matter. Emma's story wasn't just about saving a man's life, it was about awakening something in all of us. A reminder that you don't need power to make a difference. Just heart. And hers, at 10 years old, was big enough to change the world. Emma's journey began with a worn-out backpack, a fading photograph, and a heart full of quiet courage. What seemed like an ordinary flight turned into a moment that would ripple across the world, where a poor 10-year-old girl, with nothing to offer but love and instinct, saved a man whose life had been defined by wealth and power. But more than saving his life, she reignited something in him that had long been forgotten: humanity, purpose, and the beauty of selfless dreams. In a world too often divided by status, money, and indifference, Emma reminded everyone that true greatness comes not from what you have, but from what you give. Her wish wasn't for herself, but for children like her, those who suffer quietly, who endure loss, and who dream despite the odds. And that wish, simple and pure, built a hospital, healed hearts, and changed lives. This story is a reminder that kindness has no age, compassion knows no class, and even the smallest voice can spark a movement. Emma's voice did more than echo through one man's soul, it stirred millions. Because in the end, it wasn't just Henry Langston who was saved that day. It was all of us.